Hi everyone, Michelle Fix-It here. I'm in this position because it's my most comfy position right now. So this is the video of life after second epidural blood patch. So that's where we're at. Today is currently Saturday for me, and I had an epidural blood patch on Thursday. So I was kind of grumpy with the people by the end of it, because my procedure, my epidural blood patch for my spinal CSF leak, was supposed to happen at 1, and they called me the day prior to, and they asked if I had elected to get sedation, light sedation for the procedure. I didn't know that was an option. I'm here to share with you guys it is an option. And so I elected to do that. They told me to come in an hour early for additional paperwork, which was the same paperwork I filled out the first time. And pregnancy test, and then putting an IV in, and then by 2:30 I still had not been seen, and I wasn't, because I was getting the anesthesia, I wasn't allowed to consume any fluids or food during that, from like midnight until that time span. And I'm very fluid dependent. I'm very dependent upon all of the coping mechanisms that have been able to get me the upright time that I have without, being stuck in a bed. That's where we're at. And so I was a grumpopotamus. I was, by the end of it, I was just like, I was dehydrated, I needed salt, I just needed a lot of stuff. So that's your precursor to how everything went. To bring you up to speed, if you don't know, I have a CSF leak or leaks, a spinal CSF leak or leaks, and I heavily suspect that I also have a cranial leak. I know, whether I will ever get diagnosed or not, that I did have a very substantial cranial leak from a dental procedure that went awry, and I dealt with that for a couple years, not knowing what it was, just thinking it was a sinus communication, which is also something that doesn't commonly happen. And turns out that I was giving all the classical symptoms for a cranial leak, which I, again, didn't know. And I think that it has slowed down enough where it's still there, but I have not been able to acquire a doctor for cranial CSF leak. However, I have been able to acquire a doctor for the spinal CSF leaks, or leak. I don't know. We're not sure yet. So, this video in particular will be what to expect if you are getting your brain just doesn't work all the way. Like I was in the whole, like, be upright because of intracranial hypertension or rebound intracranial hypertension, and now I'm just like, my brain is not working all the way, so I might have to change positions during this video. I'm not really sure yet. But anyways, this is what to expect when you get an epidural blood patch for CSF leak. And this is round 2 for me. So you go to the hospital, of course you find a doctor, you go to the hospital, you're going to have paperwork, ask them if you can get anesthesia. If you would like to get anesthesia, get anesthesia. If you don't want anesthesia, don't get anesthesia. It's completely up to you. I've had one with anesthesia and I've had one without anesthesia. My first epidural blood patch, anesthesia was not offered. I was also in terrible condition because I was given a new leak, or told by the doctor they could have made my old leaks worse, whichever. And here's like liabilities involved and all of that. Whatever the cause, I was leaking substantially more than I was accustomed to leaking, and therefore I could not get upright at all minus like limping to the bathroom, which didn't really even occur because I literally had a bucket in my room because I physically could not do things. And it was scary because, you know, that's me if I'm not paying attention to my body cues and utilizing my coping mechanisms, and it was never ending. It was a 5-day long pursuit, and it was terrible. So that epidural blood patch went into the hospital. They will give you quite a few injections to numb that area of your back, and they were incredibly painful because anyone that has been in pain, substantial amount of pain and disorientation, should understand or know, I assume, because I only know the normal of me, that when you're already in pain and you're already uncomfortable, everything is going to make you feel worse. So that's what happened with me. So all of those needles poking into me hurt a lot. The whole thing hurt a lot. And if anesthesia would have been an option, I would have elected to get it after experiencing the epidural blood patch without the anesthesia. Just like with childbirth, where it's painful and terrible and everything else, the wonderful prize at the end of the procedure was getting the blood patch. And in my instance, as soon as the blood, they said you're going to feel pressure, I was expecting substantial pain because all these needles were hurting me. And it was, every time I think about it, I want to sing like, oh, oh, it's magic, you know, because that's how it felt. For me, that's what it felt like. It was, they put the needle in, but I couldn't feel it. I didn't know if one of those pokes in my back was the blood patch. I was not getting like context clues along the way during all the poking and the needles that I felt. And so I was just like, did they do it yet? Did they do it yet? Is it in yet? What's going on? In my mind, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, I hope that like they just tell me that like they're done, because this is terrible. Like, it was very uncomfortable for me and very painful for me. I was very grumpy and disoriented and just like whole 9 yards. And so then they say, okay, well, you're going to feel pressure, and you know, it's best if we get all of this in. And so even if you want to stop, you know, please just try to push yourself. And I'm like, oh goodness, what's going to be worse than what I've just experienced with all these needles going into my back? And I didn't experience that painful pressureness, whatever stuff they were talking about. What happened for me is all of a sudden I felt like I was a deflated balloon. And then I guess as they were putting the blood in, I just felt inflated. It was the coolest, most awesome, fantastic experience. Well, one of the most awesome, cool, fantastic experiences for me, because it was like I felt expanded. I don't know how to better say that. And it was like, I'm just thinking to myself, why do I feel like I was deflated and I'm being like filled up and made whole again? This is so weird. And then it got to a point where I'm like, oh geez, I don't think I can inflate anymore. Like, I feel like we're reaching the point where I'm going to pop. And then I felt very pressurized, and I'm like, oh gosh, I have to keep going, whatever they're doing. I have to just like let them do it, let them do it, let them do it, and then boom, they're done. And they're like, okay, we're done. And I was like, score, I made it through. And so that was 20 units. Last one, and 20 units this one. And so I was very excited because I felt, while I was laying there, I felt so good, and I was just like smiling from ear to ear. I was like, that was amazing. I want to do that again. Like, I want all the blood patches ever if this is how it's going to feel. And so I was very excited. And then once I started to sit up carefully, because I had already known I'm supposed to like roll, like you're supposed to like log roll. You don't just get up even though you feel like you totally could, because you can blow this fresh new awesome blood patch that just made you feel great. So I like rolled to sit upright, and then as soon as I sat upright, I was like, no, that was a bad decision. And so then I went right back down. I was like, no, I feel great laying down, but I do not feel great sitting up. This is not as good as it gets. I want to feel like that when I am upright. So get put in the bed, and then get rolled out, and you know, back is screaming, very uncomfortable, which was very like cognitively confusing because I would think that with all the anesthesia stuff that like I wouldn't be able to feel all of that pain, but I did. I felt all the pain. I don't know why I felt all the pain, but I did. And you know, you're really, if you research this procedure instead of just going by your doctor's advice, no offense, doctors, not all doctors are the same. Like people that only specialize in sealing up CSF leak people have a protocol in place where you were supposed to be laying down for hours and then you were supposed to be on strict bed rest for a couple of days to let that blood patch sit up, which is what I'm doing. And you're supposed to do abdominal binding, and you know, there's a procedure to make sure that that blood patch stays happy and it like sets up and it builds little scabby friends inside your dura, and then like it forms a nice little cohesive patch. Not like, oh, you're feeling great, let's just like let that not set up, not cure, and it's just gonna go away, and then you got to get it done again. So once we, you know, they were satisfied, they're like, okay, you're good, you know, they were like, just take it easy for the next couple days. So got wheeled out to the vehicle, laid down in the vehicle on my back to get back to the house, which was incredibly painful because everything was hurting. Like I felt great, my back was hurting though. And I'm not used to just dealing with one singular thing at a time. Normally it's like, I'm having auditory issues, I'm having visual issues, my brain's not working properly, I feel like I'm going to faint, my hands are shaking today, my feet are numb today, I have interscapular pain, I have lower back pain, oh geez, why am I having this whooshing going on? Well, now there's the ringing in my ears, so that's a little different. All these different things, all at the same time. An abundance of involvement of sensory input, output, all this stuff. Random bouts of tachycardia, maybe some bradycardia, maybe this, maybe that. Like I just never know what my body's going to do. I would love to have a normal body, and that is the goal for me. To get as normalish as I can be would be fantastic. So feeling great otherwise, and just having excruciating back pain without all the other weird stuff that normally just comes in the life of being me, Michelle Fix-It, or just Michelle, whatever you want to call me. It was still really crummy. Going from the hospital back to the house to do the bed rest, getting up the stairs was horrific because every step I took, every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. No, it was, I'll be hurting you. So my back was just like, oh, very painful. And so got into bed, put a bunch of patches all over myself. I have like this little Salonpas patches. They're like really mentholy. And I can't tolerate the smell if I'm in the bouts of a migraine, but I can sort of tolerate it if I'm just like super uncomfortable. So we had those. We also have, we also have the lidocaine 4% patches. They're not as stickable as the other ones. Like they hit hard. They're great. But if you like have them on your back or you move, like they just off because they're too gooey. So they're really hard to keep on. So you'd have to like wrap them on there. So did that, Tylenol, naps, no ibuprofen, no aspirin, very bad things to do with your blood patch. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be like, why? Because research it. Spend hours researching this condition. If you don't like the advice, you're not supposed to have blood thinners, you're not supposed to have anything, and aspirin thins out your blood. You're not supposed to have anything that is going to react or interact with the blood patch turning into a gelatinous cured patch, okay? And so I tried to abide by those standards. And after the pain, after the resolving of, you know, I still have POTS-like symptoms because I also have POTS, which may be caused by the CSF leak. So with all those things being said, once everything kind of set up, it had been a handful of days, then I knew that for 6 to 8 weeks, possibly 12 weeks, possibly 6 months, totally depends on the source because everyone has varied opinions on this, because it's not like we haven't like we've known about this for like 15, 20 years. as far as doctors and stuff. I'm not saying we as in I'm a doctor because I'm clearly not a doctor. But these specialized doctors have known about this stuff for about 15, 20 years based off of my personal research. But how to treat, knowing about something and how to properly treat, what the gold standard for treatment method should be, all those points and key factors, and getting to a point of studying it enough because you have enough patient base to come up with the best ways to mitigate and make it where whatever treatment method you give, you don't have to continually redo. Basically says bed rest for several days, 24, 48, 72, completely debatable. I decided on the 72, which is what I'm doing this time as well. And then 6 to 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or up to 6 months, no BLT, no bending, lifting, twisting, no picking up anything in excess of 5 pounds. This doctor's protocol says don't pick up anything over 20 pounds. I'm not testing it. I'm not doing it. I'm going to be as stringent as possible with recuperation because I want the fastest track of recovery and making each patch count. So that's my personal stuff that I'm doing. So I realized after several weeks, undeterminate, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, somewhere along those lines, had a follow-up call with the radio anesthesiologist that performed my blood patch that was subsequent to the CT myelogram that was looking for where my leaks are on the right side, CT myelogram on the right side. She was like, so how are you? I said, I'm doing great. She's like, oh, good. Like, I'm like honestly surprised because the first few weeks I felt about 15 to 20% better than I did prior to the CT myelogram, making everything way worse. And then by the time that we scheduled the second blood patch, she came in and was like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm still doing great. Because I'm about 10 to 15% better than I was before the CT myelogram. And so she wanted to do another CT myelogram of the left side because we have some areas of concern on the right side, but we really need to do the left side to see everything. She started on the right side because she said that the majority of leaks come from the right side for whatever reason. So that's why she elected to do the right versus the left. I did ask that question. I asked lots of questions. I am probably a very obnoxious patient. And she really wanted to do the left side, which is not feasible for me at current time because I need to have people that I can utilize as resources to properly help caretake my children and transportation during the process of getting the patches because I am the primary caregiver for my children. My husband works. My dad was in town for the right CT myelogram, whole thing. So I will be getting the left side done as well, but I will be doing that when my dad comes back. And so he can help transport me. And then a friend of mine will help caretake my children during that process. And then the two of them will help caretake my children because, 2-year-old and an 11-year-old take time and care when mommy is laid in bed for 2 to 3 days. And so that's where we're at. So this is, I guess we're going on starting, so Thursday got it done. Friday would have been the 24-hour mark. Today, Saturday, we're now in the 48-hour mark. And so 2.5 days in. And honestly, I want to get out of bed. With my first blood patch at this time period, I still felt like even though I felt pretty good, I didn't have such a want to get out of bed. I did deal with rebound intracranial hypertension. So all of a sudden I felt very pressured. Everything up here was just very pressured. And so I got to a point where I was like, I think because of all of my research, I'm experiencing intracranial hypertension. So I don't really know how to mitigate this because some doctors, when they do epidural blood patches, will give like Diamox or something like that. I keep reading about that to combat the intracranial hypertension, which is an excess of pressure, so that you don't get too pressured and then you blow out the patch and then you have to do all this all over again. I was not afforded the luxury of having any type of additional things to offset higher pressures. It was more like, we patched you, go be free, which is great, which is the reason I'm there, because it's like, hey, you have symptoms, you have track history, we're going to do an MRI of your brain, we're going to get your burn score to see your susceptibility of how much you probably are leaking. Like, statistically, I've got a score that says that I'm leaking, which, if you're new to this and you're trying to get any of this stuff, you need to get an MRA, and have a burn score, which will give you a scale rated score of how likely you are to have a leak. If you know when you suspect that you're low or suspect that you're high, go in there when you're low, so that way it'll be easier to read. That's what I did. My machine broke. They had me in an MRI for 3.5 hours, and still, with being flat for 3.5 hours, which is a long time to rebuild your cerebral spinal fluid pressure, I still had a burn score that says this lady's probably got a pretty substantial leak. And I was like, yay! And he's like, yeah, but if you were laying down for 3.5 hours and this is your score, like, you've really got to have a pretty decent leak. Because when I first went in there, and I know I'm like segueing all over the place, when I first went in there, being the type of person that I am, that's like peppy and upbeat and this and that and like animated and talkative and stuff, he's like, I'm really surprised. Like, I almost felt like he didn't believe me, where he's like, I'm really surprised that you're as functional as you are with having had a leak or a suspected leak for this long. And, you know, like, because I've had 3 children, 4 epidurals with those children, 2 for 1, which was not fun. Started having symptoms after the first, really got a lot worse after the most recent child, still in the outskirts of that, and then had a confirmed CSF leak with a lumbar puncture. And he's like, I don't understand how you're so functional. And I really think that he thought that getting the burn score, it would be like, no, it's something else. This is all in her head. Which is why, you know, I was pretty impressed with how impressed he was of functionality once we did have a score to put to a level of functionality for me. So with this second blood patch, my back still really hurts. Anesthesia, get anesthesia. That the biggest complaint I have with getting the anesthesia, I know I went from that topic to a new topic, and it's because I'm just like, I have so many things that I could just like, I wish I could just osmosis and just give you all the information instead of rambling on and on. But the big takeaway for me, first blood patch versus second blood patch, is second blood patch, aside from the very big grumpies that I had about not being able to eat or drink or anything like that because of the anesthesia, and having the appointment scheduled at 1, getting there before noon, because we got there at 11:30, we weren't seen until 2:30, which was still an hour and a half after the scheduled time that we were supposed to be seen. And I know, whatever, but think about being hungry, dehydrated, all those things all at the same time. You're not going to be very nice. Plus, like, not dealing with your coping mechanisms. Just saying. So if we scrap all the grumpies that I was personally dealing with, and we just look at how everything went. First epidural blood patch, IV in the arm to be able to take blood out when the time was appropriate for the epidural blood patch. So you get an IV regardless. Again, probably CSF, cranial CSF leak. So I, if you watch any of my videos, like, it seems like I have allergies, but at some point I will find a cranial leak doctor as well. Right now I'm chasing and trying to deal with the CSF, spinal CSF, as best I can. So anyways, you get an IV in your arm regardless if you get anesthesia or not. It should be that IV that they put in your arm for, in my instance, the second blood patch, it should be that they can retrieve the blood. I knew by the way that it felt, because I have very sensitive, weird veins, that it didn't feel correct with the second blood patch. And so I asked the lady, because I have the weird thing where like when they do the fluid, when they do the tester with the fluid in your IV, I smell it and taste it, which I thought was normal, and I found out recently is not, according to the nurse. So if you do that, we're weird. We're just special. Add that to your special list. But anyways, so she tested it, and because someone else had put it in, and I had her as a new person, and I was like, I don't feel like it's correct, and I don't want to be in there and then having to get an IV, da 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 da. Can we check this? So she could put in, but she could not collect. So then I got a second one here, and so we got that one in. First blood patch just had it right here. Second blood patch had it right here. They couldn't pull from it, and then they put another one in here. Yeah, I've already healed up a smidge. So she was able to pull from my arm. So we tested that theory. It worked out well. So got the anesthesia. Your positioning is gonna be like this, but you're like this. And with IVs and a blood pressure cuff, it's kind of weird. But they're gonna have you on your tummy, and they're gonna have you stretch out your arms so that you can go in. If this is not part of your stuff, like you need to make sure that you're getting a CT guided CT guided epidural blood patch. That is supposed to be the best. Even if you're getting a blind one, especially if you're getting a targeted one, you should be put into a CT machine for this stuff. So you're going to assume like I'm going into a tunnel position on your tummy. And once I had the anesthesia, like I was just there. Like I wasn't grumpy anymore because I wasn't thinking about food. I wasn't irritated because of my dehydration level, any of that stuff. Like I just felt good, and I was like, this is great. I feel super awesome, and you guys haven't given me a blood patch. You just gave me some anesthesia. Like this is cool. So I'm just in there, and I was a little tired too. I was tired, grumpy, this, that, and like once all my like random pains went away, from just life, discomforts of life, I was just there, and I think I took a nap. Like I didn't even notice them doing any poking or prodding or anything, and then they're like, okay, we're done, and I was like, all right, cool. And I was like kind of aware, like just listening to them, but like I didn't feel anything, and it was fantastic. I didn't get my like, oh geez, I feel so good moment of like deflated balloon to inflated balloon. And then the thing that I noticed most is that again, I did the whole roll up to sit up thing. And when I did that, normally, especially with not having an appropriate amount of salt via my salt pills, not having an appropriate level of hydration, like not having any of my coping mechanisms going on, I sat up slowly, and I didn't hear anything, and I didn't see anything. Whereas when I first went in there, hearing, auditory, visual, lots of disturbances, and I was like, man, this is great. Like this is weird. Like I have no pain and no visual or auditory stuff. Like just no weirdness. Like is this what it's like to be just like a normal person, where you don't have all that static in your eyes, you don't have all that static in your ears, you don't have like some annoying pain that you're just like, you know it's there and it's making you a little grumpy, but it's like your baseline level of pain, and you're just like trying to ignore it and trying to focus on like your life instead of your body. Is this what it's like? So that's where I was. That's what I was thinking about. I was like, this is just bizarre. So got into bed, went in, told husband Cat, I was like, oh, I love you, everything's great. And he's like, so I assume this went well. I was like, yeah, I feel like I was like, I have no pain. I have no pain, and I have no weirdness with my ears, no weirdness with my eyes. Like I feel good. And normally also like I'll have like throat involvement. I have so many weird haywire things. And he was like, cool, because when you went in there, you were very much a grumpy, not nice cat. And I was like, I know, It's like the Snickers commercial, except like on steroids with how I was, or how I get, because I have all these things that I'm dealing with. And they're like, okay, well, since you had anesthesia, you have to lay here for an hour. So I was like, well, that's great, because like it should be that I have to lay here for a while. And then they brought me some like really nasty sandwich, but I was like, I don't care because I'm so hungry. I just need a sandwich. And then we started getting salt pills into me. I started hydrating, did all the stuff, started feeling super duper awesome. And then it was time to go. And so got in the wheelchair, got escorted by my husband Cat to T2, which is our second trailblazer, because you guys are here for CSF video, or maybe you're here for truck stuff, car stuff, whatever, and you just happen upon my video. I don't have a mixed audience. And I laid down in T2, and we started our venture. I really, really expected the anesthesia to last longer than it did. So it took us about an hour and a half to get back to the house. And so while I got into the vehicle and I was all like, oh, I feel so good. This is all so great. Life is wonderful. About 45 minutes, half an hour in, because like we had sat at the hospital for about an hour, I was like, oh my goodness, my back really hurts. So it's like all that pain and discomfort that I didn't experience during the procedure that would have made me like become more accustomed to the level of pain that I had from all the pokies, that came in full force. And that was super not fun because I didn't have any Tylenol, anything with me, anything with me. And excuse me, by the way. And so I was like, oh goodness, this is horrible. So then every bump and jump and this and that we felt in the vehicle was magnified. And that was pretty bad. Let's just say that. It was not fun. And so I'm like grumbling to husband. I'm like, you better stop, pay attention to the potholes, and you better pay attention to all this stuff because I feel it all in my back. And he's like, I'm trying to drive in DC with rush hour traffic. Leave me alone, you cranky person. So, to be a fly on the wall, it would have been an interesting conversation to hear. So then we get back again. By that point, going up the stairs, horrible. And I was like, patch me up, husband. I wanted to say patch me up like Scotty, but his name is not Scott or Scotty. So husband Caddy, patch me up, husband Caddy. And so we only had the lidocaine patches here, so he put those on, and they're like cold and gelatinous, and then like every time I'd move to try to find a comfy position, they like roll up like a fruit roll up, and I'm just like, these things are stupid, I don't want them. I was like, I need the small little Mendeley Salome paws because they stick to me and they become obnoxious and they stay, they're like a little barnacle, they just stay on you and they slowly rip off. So he went to the store, he got me Lunchables, which is like my recovery food because I'm a weirdo. That's just what I do. I want Capri Suns. I don't know, when you were sick and you stayed home from school, like your mom would, or dad or whoever would probably give you Lunchables. My mom did. And they came with Capri Suns. And so he got like the little Lunchables that were not in the bigger box that have the Capri Sun. And then he got a bunch of Capri Suns. And it's nostalgic and it just makes me feel like a little child that's staying home from school. I don't know, it works. Every time I have a procedure or surgery or whatever, that's what I do. So he went out, he got the Salome paws, he got additional bites, took care of the children. He's a rock star, great at taking care of me. I super appreciated him, loved him so much. And pretty much hung out for a couple days, did the 48 hours, mowed the grass at a property, took the kittens out and about on little adventures, and then he was like, okay, are we done? And I was like, yeah, go. Because we have, more than one house. He's like, I have a house, and then he has a house, and then like our family moves back and forth between the houses. We're just special, weird people. Works out though. You want to stay married to someone for like ever? Have it where everyone can like migrate away. Like, okay, you're annoying me, I'm gonna go to my house. Okay, I'm annoying you, you go to your house. It's great for the relationship. It really is. Best and worst thing for our marriage is me having my own separate house. I know it sounds like really privileged and stuff, but it's kind of necessary with what I do for work to have this situation, and it doesn't have a lot of overhead, so don't judge me. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. And he left with the children. They're out doing food drives and obligations that he had that were pre-existing. And I'm just kind of sitting in bed and I'm listening to and watching other people's CSF stories and stuff like that, realizing that I really should be doing more videos. I'm pretty much just catching up on my comments on YouTube because I'm really bad about that, because when I'm upright and feeling decent to not super crappy, I try to consolidate in as much time for doing things as I possibly can. And then now that I know, or now that I have known what's wrong with me, I have periods where I just have to lay down, and I call those my reboot periods, where I lay down. I'm not sleeping, but I'm letting my body build the appropriate amount of cerebral spinal fluid pressure so that I can have as much time as possible to feel like a normal person and not be grumpy when I'm upright, and to have energy. But it's basically, I live my life as a slow sand clock timer thing, where it's like, I know that if I do X amount of energy, that's going to deplete me at a rate that's 2 to 3 times worse than if I was to just be sitting somewhere. And so I have to have like incremental stuff. I did do the spoon theory stuff for a while. As it turns out, spoon theory really didn't apply to me. What really applied to me is that I have a CSF leak. Pick one: cranial, cerebral spinal fluid leak. Could be leaks. I have 2 suspicious areas from that right CT myelogram. We'll find out what's going on with the left side pretty soon, and we'll take it from there. But 10 out of 10, definitely recommend the blood patches, even though mine are blind. I'm probably going to wait until the hour that it is my 72 mark and get out of this bed. Because as it is, like, occasionally I have to sit up, like once I start building in pressure, I sit up for a little while. Don't mind my mess over there. I sit up for a little while, slowly, carefully, lose some of my symptoms, and then as I feel like I'm going back down with pressure and stuff, then I'll get down. If you have had a blood patch, or if you haven't had a blood patch, but you're looking for a preventative measure that kind of helps if you are not afforded the luxury of the Diamox stuff to alleviate the intracranial hypertension, getting in a hot room and soaking your feet in hot water seemed to work pretty well for me on my first one. I haven't had those intense pains like I had with that first one, which has been great. So the coming weeks we'll be able to tell if I am able to say, okay, now I'm 40% better than I was before my CT myelogram, because we're using that as my reference point. And if this blood patch is similar to the first blood patch, if I ended up being 15 to 20% more, then we could guesstimate that I should be 30 to 40% more after it. If it gets more than that, I'll be super excited. And then several weeks after, if I'm at the 10 to 15% mark, like I was with the first blood patch, then that means that I should be at 20 to 30% improved, which is still a move in the right direction. Gives me better management of my life, and will give me a super happy, excited disposition. And I will just continue on this route, get the CT myelogram for the left side. I was promised the blood patch immediately after, since the first one was so bad. And I will continue to do the blind blood patches, and then I will continue to do, if it's afforded to me, targeted blood patches. And then we have 2 areas that are very suspicious for venous fistulas, which is a little bit more scary, which, even though I really like the doctors that I have right now, nothing on them, but they are not the best for the venous fistulas as far as what I've read and researched and heard within the CSF leak community. So if it turns out that after a substantial amount of blood patches, I do have to get venous fistulas surgically repaired, then I would likely be trying to go to the Dr. S at the Cedars facility in California. Pretty much made that decision because I really don't want to play around with my health and have something wrong go on. But I'm super excited and very fortunate and lucky to be in a geographical proximity to two doctors that have given me fantastic care thus far, minus the CT myelogram and not having patches available on the weekends and the 5 days flat on my back. Both of them have great bedside manner. If you ask, I will tell. I am not one of those creators or content providers that's going to sit there and give you a bunch of information. No offense to them, but if you need resources, want to know who my doctors are, whatever, I am not going to gatekeep those physicians, because these are the kind of physicians where if you are at the end of your rope with the CSF leak adventure, and you need doctors that will help, yes, I have multiple phones. You ask, I'll tell. That's it. Because they're both fantastic. And again, I hope it doesn't hurt their feelings if they end up seeing my videos at some point in time. They are fantastic. They are just not the best for certain pieces of this adventure. And so, being that I am very nervous about my body, if it's a CSF venous fistula, Dr. S seems to be the right person for that, or Dr. Henderson, but Dr. Henderson has a lot of obstacles he puts out there. So even though he is more geographically available, Dr. S would probably be the more practical solution for that. And if I just keep getting blood patches and they don't seem to work as well as I feel like they should, and we just kind of get to a stopping point, then I will be trying to go to Dr. Carroll, because I think all of these physicians, all of them that have the knowledge and the success rates that they do, they're all trailblazers in my book. And so I'm just really happy to know what's finally going on with me. And if you care to know what's going on with me, there's other videos about my weird stuff. But here you go if you if you need a little eyeball. But there's a lot of other stuff just besides that. So I hope I answered any questions that you might have over a CSF leak epidural blood patch. And I hope you guys like and subscribe. Have a fantastic day. And I hope this helps you. And I will try to find creative ways to get this very useful information out to those that need it, because I have a strong suspicion that, and so do other people, mainly doctors that are far more formally educated than me, that this is a very underdiagnosed condition, and there are a lot of people out there that are suffering needlessly. So if I can be the video to help even just one person, then that's a success for me. So have a fantastic day, have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!